The Home Run King. Scraps of Time, 1937. By Patricia C. McKizzak. Illustrated by Gordon C. James. In G's attic. There was always something new for the cousins to discover in their grandmother's attic. Well, new wasn't the right word. There was always something old to discover. Things that had belonged to different people in their family, most of whom had lived long before Trey, Aggie, or Maddie Ray was born. Earlier, G had told them about Aunt Lily Bell Turner, who had gone to New York to study writing. Now Trey wanted to hear all about a baseball that had belonged to Lily Bell's brothers. Everybody always called the Turner brothers by their nicknames, Tank and Jimbo. G explained. All except Lily Bell. To her, they were always Peter and James. Who gave them this ball? Maddie Ray asked. Josh Gibson. He was the slugger on the Homestead Grays, G answered. See his autograph? There are other ones, too. Trey took the ball from Maddie Ray. Satchel Paige signed this? He was a great pitcher, he said. He's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Tank and Jimbo new players in the Hall of Fame? Aggie was impressed. Tell us more about Tank and Jimbo, Trey asked. Maddie Ray was still trying to get the baseball back from Trey until G handed her an old photo from the trunk. G sat on the stool and began her story. This is a picture of the Homestead Grays. You mean there were teams with just black players? Maddie Ray said. Oh, yes. None of the major league teams will let blacks play. And back in 1973, when this photo was taken, the Homestead Grays were as good as any major league team around, or better. Chapter 1. Caught. James and Peter Turner looked like twins, even though James was a full year older than Peter. Now, with their sister Lily Bell working at a Pittsburgh newspaper, there wasn't anybody in Nashville, Tennessee who called the boys by their real names. James and Jimbo and Peter was Tank. They did everything together, and what they loved best was playing baseball. If only they had a team to play on, and other teams to play against. They hardly ever got to watch games either. But then Tank found a way to sneak into the Sulphur Springs ballpark to see the Negro League's games. For free. It was risky though. Big Bad Joe Monday was the ballpark manager. I know you squirrels are sneaking and peeking, but I'll catch you one of these days, Mr. Monday told the brothers many times. And when I do, I'm going to call the police. But we're just kids, said Tank, who was 11. Old enough to go to the Tennessee State chain game. Then Mr. Monday lowered his voice. You'll be cracking rocks from sunup to sundown for the rest of your lives. Still, Tank decided that watching a good baseball game was worth the risk. See, Tank loved taking chances. Like when Sammy Franklin double-dared Tank to ride down Deacon Hill free-handed on his bicycle. It was crazy, but Tank did it. Of course, he fell and broke his nose. But when Sammy called Tank a fool, it was Jimbo who tried to break Sammy's nose. Tank always counted on his brother to have his back. So he went on his merry way, getting into hot water and expecting Jimbo to fish him out. And that's why Jimbo followed Tank whenever he sneaked into the ballpark. It was a hot day in June. The Homestead Grays was playing the Tennessee All-Stars in a 5-game series over the next 8 days. Same as always, Tank pushed aside the loose board in the fence behind the center field bleachers. The opening was just large enough for him and Jimbo to squeeze through. Then they crawled on their bellies under the bleachers until they found a perfect spot to watch the game. The boys were especially excited today because The Grays had one of the greatest new players. Josh Gibson had just joined the team. Tank already knew about him. He read everything he could on Negro League players. Josh was a home run threat every time he came to bat. Ordinarily, Tank and Jimbo rooted for the Tennessee team, but the Grays were special. With Josh Gibson, they could make the 1937 season one of the best ever in the National Negro Baseball League. The umpire yelled, "Batter up!" Tank watched Josh Gibson take long strides to home plate. He was a muscular man with powerful arms and a big smile. He set his bat. The all-star pitcher, Lee Webb, hurled two balls and then a blazing fastball strike. "Look at him," Tank shouted. "Gibson is holding the bat with one hand now." "Yeah, just like Babe Ruth," said Jimbo. "He's mocking the pitcher." Gibson pointed to right field. "Look, he's showing us where he's going to hit the ball, or he's going to hit the homer," said Jimbo. "Do you think Gibson is as good as the Babe?" Tank asked. "I think so," Jimbo said. "But there's no way to tell because colors can't play in the majors." "One day they will," said Tank. "When pigs fly, maybe," Jimbo put in. The pitcher was in the windup when suddenly Tank felt two strong hands grab his feet and pull him backward. "Run, Jimbo!" shouted Tank. "Monday's got me!" Jimbo crawled away on all fours and managed to escape. "Ha! Finally got one of you squirrels," Mr. Monday said and laughed. It sounded wicked. Tank spit out dirt and coughed. Mr. Monday dragged him to his feet. "Please, sir, don't put me out of on the chain gang. It would break my mother's heart," he pleaded. All at once, the crowd sent up a roar. Cheers and shouts hung on the muggy June air. Josh Gibson had hit a home run with one hand. Monday cupped one hand over his eyes to follow the ball. "Look at it fly," he said, and then whistled through his teeth. For a brief moment, he loosened his grip on Tank. Tank twisted out of Monday's hold and dashed away. "If I ever see you around this park again, you're going to get it. Hear me?" Monday called after him and shook his fist. Tank never answered, never looked back, or stopped running. Chapter 2. Paying the Price. Tank caught up with Jimbo a block away from the stadium, and they jogged in a slow trot down Jefferson Street. Every once in a while, they looked back to make sure Monday wasn't following. "That was a close call," said Jimbo. "Too close for me," Tank replied. They turned at 17th Street, down Johannes Street, then bounded up the steps of number 909. After a year, the boys were beginning to feel like the house was home, not a borrowed place. "I got tired of rock farming," Daddy said, laughing. So he had sold his share of the Turner farmland to a company that quarried rock. Tank missed running in the wide open fields. No cars to watch out for, no concrete to scrape his knees on. Their new house was exactly like all the others on the street, a small, white-frame bungalow with a well-kept yard. The houses were built in the early 1900s by a man named August Diamond. So people began calling the area Diamond Row. People still did, but only a few remember why. Like a lot of women, Mama worked now. She ironed shirt cuffs and collars at the Right Bright Laundry for a penny a shirt. Daddy was lucky enough to find work with the L&N Railroad as an oiler. Times were hard in 1937. There was a depression going on. Too many people with not enough money or jobs. Now that Lily Bell had left home, the Turners had an extra bedroom. And like many other families on Diamond Row, they had a room to rent sign in their front window, one that Jimbo and Tank had made. Today the sign was gone. "Wonder who rented the room," Tank said. "We'll find out when Mama and Daddy get home," Jimbo said. Less than an hour later, Jimbo and Tank were upstairs when the doorbell rang. They started downstairs and watched as Daddy answered the door. It was Mr. Monday. And this time, and with him was none other than Josh Gibson. Tank looked at his brother. He didn't know whether to shout for joy or scream in fear. They both crouched down to stay hidden. They could hear Mr. Monday introduce himself and Josh Gibson to Daddy. All three men shook hands. Mighty nice that you've agreed to, Mr. Turner, Mr. Monday said. If it wasn't for the Chitlin circuit, our players would have nowhere to go. Tank understood what Mr. Monday was talking about. The Chitlin circuit was the name for the group of sports arenas and theaters in different cities where blacks could play. Since colored people couldn't get rooms in white hotels or eat in white-owned restaurants, black families opened their homes to ball players, musicians, and other travelers. You have a lovely home, said Josh Gibson, and I'll abide by all of your rules. No whiskey and no smoking. Daddy nodded his approval. Those are my wife's rules, he added with a smile. I have to abide by them too. They all laughed. Daddy went on. But I promise you'll be more comfortable than sleeping in the back seat of a car or in a bus. Some nights I slept in fields, Josh replied. Sleeping in a real bed these next few days will be pure luxury. Jimbo and Tank stared at each other. Josh Gibson was staying in their house? Jimbo, Tank, Daddy shouted. Get down here and help take these bags up. How lucky could an unlucky guy get? Tank muttered to himself. Josh Gibson is staying in my house and I'm going to be on the chain gang? Daddy called again. Slowly Tank came down the steps. Jimbo followed. Mr. Monday's eyes widened. You, he shouted. My runaway squirrels. Chapter 3. Gotcha. After Daddy heard the story, he just shook his head. I caught this one red-handed today, Monday pointed to Tank, but his brother got away. Daddy blinked in disappointment. Sons, you know we don't hold with stealing and cheating. I didn't steal, Tank tried to argue. When you sneak into a ballpark while others have paid, that sure is stealing, Daddy said sharply. Same as if you took money out of Mr. Monday's pocket. Daddy, don't let Mr. Monday send me to the chain gang, Tank pleaded. I can't bust rocks from sunup to sundown. Jimbo spoke up. I should have stopped Tank, Daddy. Instead, I went along with him. Daddy gave Mr. Monday a questioning look. So did Josh Gibson. Did you tell these boys they were going to be on the chain gang? Gibson asked. Mr. Monday raised a finger. Yes, I did. A day on the chain gang is fair punishment. Tank and Jimbo can work off their debt, he said. If you'll agree, Mr. Turner. Then Mr. Monday explained that the cleanup crew at the ballpark was called the chain gang. They clean up after all home games. A day's work will pay off the price of a ticket. Sounds fair to me, said Daddy. Fine with me, shouted Tank. He wouldn't have to sneak in to see the game. He'd be right there. Gee, thanks, Mr. Monday. Mr. Monday chuckled. Tomorrow, report to my office. I'll introduce you to your crew chief. 4 p.m. sharp. Don't be late. But the game starts at noon, Jimbo and Tank said at the same time. Yes, it should be over by 4. Plenty of time to clean up before it gets dark. But I thought, Tank said. Mr. Monday chuckled again. You thought you were going to be able to get to see the game? Daddy and Josh Gibson looked as if they were about to burst out laughing. Gotcha! And Mr. Monday bent over laughing. I knew it was too good to be true, Tank muttered as he pulled Josh Gibson's bag up the stairs. Chapter 4. The game is baseball. Before dinner, Tank and Jimbo headed for the backyard. Playing baseball was one good thing about moving to the city. Tank read all about the teams in each of the two Negro leagues. He knew the stars of all the great players. He knew the stats of all the great players. Last spring, Tank had learned how to hold a bat in school, and Jimbo was learning to pitch. Daddy had cut a piece of wood that almost looked like a real bat. He had also filled a hollow rubber ball with sand. On the back porch, he strung up a fish net behind a rock that was home plate. The net was to catch the pitched balls. It wasn't a perfect setup, but Tank and Jimbo were happy. Tank swung the makeshift bat several times. He tried it one-handed, like he'd seen Josh Gibson do. Sometimes I wonder why we practice all the time. We don't have a team, Tank said. One day we might, said Jimbo. Look, who would have thought Josh Gibson would be sleeping in our house? And that happened. Tank scoffed. What good is it? We're not going to get to see him play. We still got bragging rights, Jimbo said. He picked up their baseball. Tank finally laughed too. We'll get a ball club one day, and we'll be ready, Jimbo said. Tank took his stance beside home base. Then he set his bat and waited for Jimbo's pitch. You're holding the bat too close to your body, Josh yelled from upstairs window. Loosen up some. Tank looked up and grinned. Like this? He asked, bending his arms out. Better, said Gibson. Now stay focused. Put everything out of your mind except the bat and the ball. I'm going to hit a homer just like you, Mr. Gibson. Don't think about hitting a home run. Just hit the ball. Jimbo released the pitch. It came at Tank fast and straight. Tank swung and hit a high fly ball. Jimbo easily caught it. Keep swinging like that and you'll be the world's best golfer, said Gibson. He clicked his teeth and shook his head. If you swing down and up, you'll always hit fly balls. Next time, keep your bat level. Swing out from your shoulders. Jimbo's next ball zoomed past Tank so fast he didn't see it. Great pitch, Jimbo, Josh called. You got speed. Now work on your control. Get it over the plate. Gosh, thanks, Mr. Gibson, Jimbo called up to him. Y'all call me Josh. Everybody does. Tank knew that Jimbo's next pitch would be almost perfect. Tank could practice all day long and not be as good as Jimbo. Jimbo was a natural. He never even seemed to be trying hard. Stuff comes easy for you, Tank said. It's not fair. Remember when we were learning to ride a bike? Jimbo shrugged. Your trouble is wanting to be perfect. I just like to play and have fun. Tank shook his head. What Jimbo said to him didn't make sense. Why do anything if you didn't plan to be the best? Jimbo got ready to pitch again. Then pow! Tank slammed the ball. It soared deep into the backyard. Wow! Tank yelled in triumph. Hey, that was good, Josh exclaimed. Tank cartwheeled halfway down the yard. Keep practicing and you two will be a double threat on any team, said Josh. Then he closed the window and disappeared behind Mama's lace curtain. Chapter 5. Foul. Mr. Monday was waiting for Tank and Jimbo at 4 o'clock sharp. The game was over. The Grays had won. Now the Sulphur Springs ballpark was almost empty. That was the best game I've ever seen, Tank heard one fan saying. Gibson is good as they say and more. Looks like we missed a good one, Tank said. They saw Josh signing autographs. He waved to them. But the brothers had no time to say hello. Mr. Monday was shouting at them. Next to Mr. Monday was a very tall guy with huge hands and huge feet. These two are on your chain gang, said Mr. Monday, introducing Tank and Jimbo to Apollo Monroe. Apollo giggled. He covered his mouth to hide his teeth. Tank wondered how old Apollo was, but it was hard to tell. Older than either Tank or Jimbo, that was for sure. Apollo giggled again. That's when Tank realized that Apollo was an oversized boy, a forever kid. Hey, said Apollo in a big booming voice. All of him was just a little too much for the average person. Apollo, Tank said, smiling. If I get in a fight, I want you on my team, okay? Ooh-wee, said Apollo, jumping up and down. I'll be on your team. Then he calmed down. But you gotta do what I say, or Uncle Monday will be mad at us, Apollo said softly. Get your sack, put it on, follow me. 1, 2, 3. Mr. Monday was Apollo's uncle. Poor guy, Tank thought as they tied on big burlap sacks. Apollo handed them each a broomstick with a nail driven into the end. That was how they picked up the trash. Apollo said, now we line up like a big choo-choo. We go to section C. Whee! Everything was a game to Apollo, even cleanup. When they were done with the bleachers, the boys brought the full trash bags back to Mr. Monday. Another crew was waiting to empty the bags into a large container behind the ballpark. In a few hours, they'd finished. All done, Apollo said. He clapped his hands and waved. That's it? Jimbo asked when the three of them dropped off their equipment at Mr. Monday's office. You want to do more? You want more to do? Mr. Monday answered gruffly. It was so simple and easy. Even an idiot could do it, Tank said without thinking. Even an idiot could do it, Apollo repeated slowly. Jimbo's eyes turned toward Tank. Mr. Monday's too. Tank wanted to cover his face. He felt hot all over. No, no, Tank stumbled over his words. I didn't mean that like it sounded. I was just talking. Go home, Mr. Monday said flatly. Debt paid. Tank wanted to explain. He liked Apollo. But just then, Josh Gibson came through the office door. Don't tell me that you two are in trouble again, Josh said to the brothers. We paid off our debt for sneaking into the game, said Jimbo. Yes, but they still had no way of seeing any games, Tank thought glumly. Then, as if snatching an idea out of the thin air, Tank spoke up. Mr. Gibson, it's hot down here in Tennessee. Real hot. Tell me about it, he replied. Tank hurried on. What if my brother and I volunteer to be water boys for the Grays while you are in town? The All-Stars have local boys who work for them. Josh rubbed his chin. Volunteer. Does that mean no pay? Yes, sir. Sounds all right to me. I'll speak to our manager about it. Give you an answer later on tonight. Your mama said she was serving up chicken and gravy for dinner. Look out, here I come.